Welcome to week 7 for Java programming. You can see the week 7 is the GUI unit. We'll talk about that in a minute, but you have a week 7 recording. You have a couple of quizzes, actually 3 quizzes for the week, and you want to start work on the final project activity. I'll discuss that a little bit later. Let's jump right into the GUI unit. So as I scroll down, you see the GUI unit. We have the recording that you're watching now, of course, and the write-up. So we want to pay attention to the write-up as I start going through the different sections. So in the write-up, what does GUI stand for? Which computer company started the use of GUI? So let's go right into the introduction. So here we are. And as it says, when personal computers were first invented, you saw a blinking cursor on the screen. And you had to type your commands in. You'd use commands like fdisk, config, cd, etc. Now, of course, you have the graphical user interface. Windows operating system came in, and with Apple computers, all that changed. But Apple is one that started the graphical user interface. That's what GUI stands for, right? Graphical user interface. So Apple started that. Now you'll see as we complete this unit, you're going to understand GUI, start at the basic application of GUI, comprehend the meaning of HTML, so you can see everything we're going to look at in this whole unit. We'll look at AWT, which is how you build container and non-container components for GUI type interfaces. We'll look at applets, a variety of things. Remember the points for some of these things have changed, so you want to make sure you go to the grade book before you do anything else. So this kind of warm up to give you an idea, as it says, do some web research, but these are some of the items that you'll learn about as we start talking about GUI. One slight change that I made is actually for this week you're going to have some JavaScript programming activities, and I'll get those posted this evening. And you'll see what these are going to be. You have a selection of some JavaScript online programs you can go in and take a look at. Most of them are games and doing some drawings and stuff like that, so it just gives you an idea of how JavaScript can be used. It's a lot of fun. There's really no right or wrong answer. You just do kind of a rundown of what you experienced with that. So be on the lookout for this. I don't have it posted yet, but I will. So getting back into this unit, so we went through and we answered these two. What is GUI? Which computer company started the use of GUI? Which is Apple. So now we're going to go on to section E. What does GUI do for a user? Explain what event-driven means. Explain the difference between an applet and a standalone application. So as you look at this, of course, these are called icons, right? And what do you think of when you see these? Well, you think that you can click these. I mean, that's what we learned, right? That we're able to click on an icon. So GUI, each icon represents some action or event. All the user does is click the button. No need to remember the command or anything like that. And then the command happens. Now what GUI does is it simplifies the task of interacting with the program and the computer. You don't have to memorize anything. So that's what GUI does. It simplifies the task of interacting with the computer. And you see the 4 things you're going to learn in this unit, all about GUI. And you end up creating a basic class, an abstract window toolkit. So AWT is abstract window toolkit, and this is the package that helps a program work with GUI. So this toolkit is what one would use. Now GUI events are mostly event driven. In other words, the GUI events activate when the user does something. So that's what GUI does. It activates when the user does something. And the graphical user interface consists of 3 things: the graphical components of the icon, the listener, meaning the methods within the program, and the application methods. Go back to the write-up and see what those questions are. Difference between an applet and a standalone. So categorize them to applets and standalone. Now, applets are a piece of Java code that happens in a web browser. So that's what an applet is. But a standalone application are executed from the computer's memory. So a standalone application would be like a word processing program like Microsoft Word or something like that. So you have to get that to run from the computer's memory, where Java or applets are what run on the web browser. So really applets are not the same as software. It's a bit different. Applets is a standalone application, so there's more about how these things work. So you can see you have your workstation, go to the internet, to the web server, so that would be how an applet would work. Whereas the standalone applications, those are run right off of your computer. So standalone application does not need a web browser to run. It's stored in the computer's memory. But you can create standalone applications that are still used with GUI. There's an activity practice, drag and drop, so do that as usual. A little more about graphical user interface. So you use HTML. That's of course the programming language, hypertext markup language. That's the programming language that makes web browsers work. And you probably learn a little bit about this. If you want to learn a little bit more about HTML, you can go to these two links. This talks all about HTML tags, and that's the language of internet web browsers. So go ahead and watch that just to see how tags are used within GUI applets and interfaces. And here's a practice on some code. So you can go take a look at that, see how your name and address would be displayed in the body of the web page. Okay, the GUI quiz, so you want to do that, and of course I have the quiz previews right here for you. Let's go back to the write-up. We answered all of those, didn't we? It's section B, where the two ways applets can be executed. What is the process for GUI applet or event to applet? GUI applet, event to applet. So here we are in section B. So small Java programs are executed by using a web browser, Internet Explorer, or a program called Applet Viewer. So all applet programs must import the applet package, which contains several methods to make things happen. And we're going to learn about these as we go through this section. So the 5 things we'll learn in this section, you can see we'll learn about what an applet is, advantages and disadvantages of applets, how an applet works, etc. So applets are programs that are embedded within web pages using HTML. They're executed either in the web browser or an applet viewer. So you can see that you use these HTML codes to do that. So the applet is executed when the Java web browser sees those HTML coding. Go back to the write-up and see what our questions were. What are the 2 ways applets can be executed? What is the process for GUI? So applets can happen, they're executed either by the Java compatible web browser or an applet viewer. That's how they're executed. The applet is executed when it meets the tags within the HTML. So the applet architecture, you have your web browser with the code and the applet, the internet and the server. So that's the execution, the way that it happens. But the way it happens physically is that when the event occurs, like when you click on something, the AWT, we learned about that earlier, right, notifies the applet by calling an event handler. Once this happens, then the applet takes the steps to return control to the AWT. So those are the steps that occur. Now the cycle of it, so you have to initiate it, then it has to have a start, a stop, a paint, and a destroy. Of course the destroy would be to end, right? So you can see how all of this, the whole flow chart of how these things operate. Down here you can see these different commands. Of course, those are keyword commands, aren't they? That you've learned about using keywords. So there's the life cycle of an applet, so go through that. So more about applets, so some advantages and disadvantages. So some advantages, cross-platform, they can run on any type of computer. So that's a great thing about applets, right? Java plugin versions. Some of you have had trouble with Java. And I don't mean Java program, but sometimes your computer wants you to update Java. I've seen that quite a bit. Applets are very quick because they don't have to go to the computer's memory. They're embedded in the program, the browser. They run automatically. Disadvantages of applets, Java plugin is required. Sometimes that's a problem. Sometimes it can take a lot of startup for Java applets to run. Downloading an applet from web server takes time. So you can see that there are advantages and disadvantages of applets. Here's a little program you can look at to write an applet, so you can go through that. Here's an applet practice activity, so give this a shot, display you and your friend's name. Give this a shot based on what the previous screen had. And it has you do the Java applet coding or the web page coding. And the applet quiz, so we've learned all this about applets, all these 5 things, how an applet works, the life cycle, writing a program with an applet, and then the quiz previews right over here. So that's section B. Let's go to section C. So in section C, we're going to learn about AWT, the Abstract Windows Toolkit. So let's go to the write-up. So lists the types of non-container components you can build with AWT. So AWT is the toolkit that you've downloaded, and that allows you to build these types of components. User-friendly applications using AWT. So we're going to define AWT, explain non-container and container, menus with AWT, etc. So non-container components. So these are single components. They're not part of a group. So you can see you can create a label, a button, a checkbox, a scroll bar. So these things you've seen on computers, haven't you, on Windows computer. And the container components are a collection of non-container groups. They're not a single item. Like a frame would be a container component. So if we look at this, so non-container would be like a label, a button, a checkbox, a text field. So you can see all these different things, the text area. So these are all non-container, meaning they're single items. There's even the scroll bar over here that one can program. Now container component is a frame or the top level in which things sit. You can see down here, use a variety of non-container components inside the frame. The layout of the frame is a container component too. So non-container and container components. So here's a little intro activity, so go through that about AWT. So menu bars, you've seen that within programs, right? Where you have a menu and you can make your choices, and for menu bar, they have 3 key terms in the class that you would create for menu bar. So here are some of the different menus. So there's the menu bar, the complete bar, and then there's the menu, so you can see how things are different. Those are different components, aren't they? Then you have the menu items that drop down from each of the menu components. So you can see how you end up having to program all of those things individually, don't you? So there's a layout manager. So layout is how everything sits within a frame. So the layout manager manages the components of the layout of that completed frame, that complete frame. And some of the different types of layout. There's the flow, so that puts everything into rows. But then you have the border, you have a grid layout, which makes you place things differently. So you can lay out components on a grid. The card layout, you have multiple ways to the layout can look. And then the grid bag layout which you can put different size objects. It doesn't have to go by size by default. So lots of things going on. You can see these are all keywords, and those are all components that you'd have to create. There's a practice activity, so go through that. Little activity on using AWT components, so you want to watch that. And an activity on AWT components. So see what you can do. See if you can create a login screen based on what you learned previously. And then, now this is the widget toolkit. We're not doing this. I tried to download the AWT and the tools for doing this, and it just did not work very well. You're welcome to go to the Sun website tutorial and practice that, see what you can do with it. So back to the write-up. So we went over container, non-container items. So section 10, process for an event to occur. Section D, I should say. So an event is a trigger, a single thing. Like when you click the button, that's an event. And here we're going to learn about events, study event, and understand the event class. Now there are two parts to an event, the source and the listener. And an event source may be any object which generates an event. So when you click a button, click is the event raised by the button. Listener is the piece of code that waits until it receives an event. Once an event is raised, the listener performs the operation. So these are really the steps of how an event happens when you click it. So you can see it's, it goes through lots of steps, but for us it's automatic, isn't it? So you click a button, the click event is raised, the listener is the code that waits to receive the event, and once the listener gets the event, the listener performs the operation. So it's a sequential activity, isn't it? So the source event, so this would be to a mouse motion. So this would be a listener for a mouse to move. So you can see how they would do that. And then once the mouse moves, of course, then that activity would happen. It's on what it's coded to do. Now the event listener is what notifies the program that an event can occur. And we just talked about that, didn't we? So you have to have the event listener has to be registered, and then it must implement something. It must cause something to happen. Many different classes for events. So an action event, adjustment event, so it would be like a scroll bar that moves up and down. Component event, container event. So look at all those different things that get created. And I'm just moving my mouse on the screen, and you can think about all the things here that happen just when I move my mouse on the screen to help my mouse move on the screen. Kind of interesting, isn't it? Here's an events activity, so go ahead and study that flashcard activity or go through it. Mouse events, so learning more about creating mouse events and what they do. There's some practice code. Find the sum of two values when a mouse click occurs. Go through that, give that a try. Finally, the events quiz, so you want to get that done. Now this also has a project at the end. Again, we're not going to worry about doing these projects. You're more than welcome to give it a try. We're not going to worry about that. Okay, so that's everything. Now, everything for the write-up. Now, the other part of the work for this week is the Java program activity. I don't have it posted yet, JavaScript program, but I found a website. It's part of Computer Education Week, and it has a sample of some really interesting JavaScript programming that you can do right online. And I'm going to put some links to that within this, and then you'll go through some activities, and you'll give me feedback on the activities, what you did, what you learned, and things like that. So that's going to be worth quite a few points. So I'll get that posted by the end of the day today. It'll probably take, this might be like a probably 3-hour activity, because each of these activities are an hour each. So it's going to require you to a little bit of time. And then next week, the final project, that's going to be a final project report. And I would imagine that's going to be more than a couple of hours for anyone. So for the rest of this, for the rest of the work for this, you have probably about 5 hours of work that you have to do. Okay, everyone, thanks a lot for watching. I look forward to you getting your work in. And one thing you'll notice if you go to the gradebook, I've adjusted some grades for some of the assignments that we had as optional or skip. So the gradebook has been modified a little bit, but it has not hurt anybody's grade. I've added more points. I have a couple of assignments that were worth like 10 or 12, and maybe made them worth 30. So go to the gradebook. Your percentages are all still the same, but they're just more points in there now. Okay, I will talk to you all later. Bye.